Right, I think that's enough. So let's actually begin the webinar. And I've put up this sort of, I guess, a rhetorical question here. And first of all, I'd like to apologize for the title of this webinar. I suppose in hindsight, it is a little bit clickbait. UX versus AI. It's not a boxing match. And really, if you're going to ask, will AI replace UX designers? The short answer is no. And for some more detail, the long answer is no. So what will AI do then? So basically, I would say the main situation as a UX designer where AI is going to help you is with automation, obviously. It's going to assist with repetitive tasks, tasks that take up your time, but aren't really rewarding to do. It's going to help you with data analysis. AI is fantastic at recognizing patterns, sometimes quicker than humans, and it's very good with deriving insights from data. It's going to help with collaboration, teamwork, through various different methods, and it will induce and assist with a creative process. I think we all know if we've ever been stuck with inspiration, you know, you can ask something to ChatGPT or another AI tool, and yeah, pretty soon I think you can be inspired. And that's, I guess, at the current state of affairs, and it's only going to get more advanced. So as I said, we recently launched a tool at Userbrain, a feature at Userbrain in our user testing tool, and we've called it automated transcripts. So what it is it creates instant speech-to-text transcripts for every user test video. It does what it says on the tin. So it makes it easier to discover insights quickly, meaning that although we don't advise this, and we never would advise this, it means that to get insights from user testing, you technically don't have to watch the video. Although you're going to miss out on a whole lot of stuff. But what we think it's useful for is, you can find things by looking through the transcript, by looking through the text. You can find interesting points to go in and dive into a bit more detail. So the text from your transcripts can also be copied and put into your user test reports. So if you're sharing with teammates or stakeholders, that can also save a lot of time, especially, if the customer has a slightly difficult to understand accent, like my Scottish accent. It's much easier than typing it out yourself. So there's all sorts of other benefits as well. We're also working on an AI analyzer tool, or that's what it's called in-house at the moment. But I can't really go into too much detail about that right now. So yeah, watch this space. And that's it from me. I'm now going to hand over to Clemens, who has prepared a fantastic presentation today. So I will stop sharing my screen, Clemens, and yeah, I will allow you to take over.
Thank you very much. Hi there. From my side, just have to share my screen. Give me a second. Yes, I think it should work now. I think you should see my screen. For some reason, it's showing the header element as well. No, it's not, right? It's fine. As you can see, I'm part of Parkside, a company here in Graz in Austria. And a bit more about myself. My name is Clemens Kupsch. I work at Parkside as a principal UX designer. So we're leading a UX team here of around 10 UX designers, and additionally to that, a couple of visual designers. We're doing individualized software products for different company sizes, mid-sized companies to bigger ones as well. One of our biggest clients used to be LinkedIn in the past for several years. Now we're focusing more on DACH region again. And today, together with Ewan, I would like to talk a bit about UX versus AI. Of course, as Ewan already said, it's not strictly one against the other thing. It's more for, so UX could help AI or AI could help out UX. I would like to focus a bit more on what to consider when designing for artificial intelligence. And here's the difference to what we heard before. As I said, AI could support us in our daily work, like the tools that Userbrain is providing, for example, where you could have a speech recognition and things like that. But I would like to dive a bit more into how UX should influence AI and AI products. Better said, it's not the AI itself, it's more how we present it to the user. And the question is, how are we doing this? Of course, with all the tools we're used to as UX designers, with the methods and processes, of course, with research and a user-centered approach. But what's different here? What's the differentiator here between usual UX work, if you would like to call it like that, and doing UX in the context of AI? Well, I have a sentence here, I think that says most of it. We're replacing existing human actions and interactions here with a system. And this system operates through complex algorithmic processes. And that may be a bit difficult for many users to understand or to interpret. And I think that's the core of it, at least. Very often it's a bit of a black box. Go to the next slide to give you a better representation of that. So before we took care of users in a classical context, like they're interacting with the system and they know which data they used as input to the system and what they would get out of it. But when they interact with a system that incorporates artificial intelligence, we have this very often this black box. So a user would input data, and very often it's not only the user, it could be a system, a camera system, whatsoever, and that would be input for a system that an algorithm that makes use of it and comes up with some decisions, with some recommendations, with some sort of output. And here you might have the same user as the user that to add that data, or it could be a completely different person, or even the person in the first place that's seeing those outputs for the first time. And they might have a problem to understand what the outcomes mean and how the system came to those conclusions. Let's take an example here. For example, you used to go to a doctor maybe to get your moles checked, to your practitioner, and you went in there and you let the doctor check your moles and you would get a diagnosis. A system like that would look completely different if artificial intelligence would be involved. You would kind of take out the doctor out of that example. You don't have to go there and spend time, you don't have to spend money on it that much, depending on where you live. And that all changes the way we have to think about the whole process. So what's our aim, our goal here? Well, UX for AI or human-centered artificial intelligence, HCAI. We really have to take care of the fact that we still design for human needs and values and preferences, as you can see in that quote here. And we really would need to put human needs in the center of systems, products, services that involve AI. We have to ensure that this technology is transparent, explainable, and trustworthy. That's a very, very important thing. And how are we doing that? How are we addressing that problem as UX designers? Well, we have our tool set, and generally speaking, we use the same tools as before. So we're doing user research, as I said, we're coming up with solutions, we're mapping experiences, and so on. But there are some things to consider, and I would like to go over those today. I summed them up here. We'll go through them one by one. First off, mental models and user needs. What do users think about a certain process that's replaced by a tool that makes use of AI? What are their expectations and how to handle those? And Of course, also explainability and trust. We'll get a bit, just a tiny bit, into a technical part here, but due to the time frame we have set here, I won't go too deep into that topic. Just kind of covering it to give you a better understanding what's needed here. And trust, of course, it should be trustworthy. And that comes with another topic, and that's feedback and control. And all those aspects are very important to have a successful AI product in place. Let's get started with the first one, mental models and expectations. As I said before, let's stick maybe to that example with the medical practitioner, with the doctor. Go there to check your moles. And now you're replacing that whole setup with a tool, let's say with an app. Which mental models do users already have then about the process of getting your moles checked? Well, they might go to a doctor, so they have to drive there. The mental model is that that you need an expert for it, and with this expert comes a certain set of attributes. So a doctor usually is trustworthy. They know what they're doing. They studied for a very long time to give you precise diagnosis, and you want to trust them in the end, and that's what you usually do. And the question is, can we apply those mental models also to our AI product, to our app in this case that we use as an example? So we have to understand in which current situation the users are, or the upcoming users of that product, of that service are. And we want to identify gaps in an existing solution. And of course, you could have a product that's just getting built and you don't have any limitations here. Take your time to set everything up properly, but it could also be that you have already a system in place. And when I'm talking about this example about the app that checks for your moles, that was a real project we worked on. And there was a product that was already existing. It was technically perfectly done. It did what it should, but the user experience was a bit flawed, and that's why we looked into it. And of course, there's always a set of pros and cons if you're related to the real-world experience, to meeting a doctor. So as I said, it needs time to visit a doctor. The app, on the other hand, is faster, and so on. And my recommendation here is at least use your time, or a bit of your time, to relate one to the other. So the conventional solution, so how the problem was solved in the past to the AI solution, to the product you're trying to build or that's already in place, and you try to refine it. So ask yourself those questions. How was the problem? How has the problem been solved so far or before? What were the users' expectations so far? Why is that important? Because the users will have the same expectations towards that, that artificial intelligence product or service. What error tolerance was the user willing to accept so far? So if you think about the doctor, usually I would not accept if my doctor is just giving diagnosis like from his gut feeling. I really want to diagnose me based on facts. And if he's telling me the diagnosis, well, let's say the most horrible thing that could happen is you have skin cancer. I really want him to be sure about that. So he would send in maybe a little piece he cut out of your mole and get it tested and come back with the results. How similar is the system to previous approaches? What sets the new solution apart from previous approaches? We already said could be time, could be the money aspect. I live in Austria, so it's easy to go to a doctor, but there are other countries as well and other contexts in which visiting a doctor might be very expensive things, especially if you go to a specialist. That might be an option to save money as well. So there are pros and cons, and you need to see and understand how the old solution differs from the new advanced AI solution. The other thing is expectation management. So I think it's very important to understand that users will have certain expectations about the product, about the service they are using in the context of AI, whatever that is. Usually it's somehow replacing a workflow, a process that was before done by human beings. So they have concepts about it and they have expectations that are coming with it. And a good way to understand that is in the beginning to define a product statement. And I showed an example here on the slide. So usually you would come up with that in the very early stage when you design a product, maybe in the product thinking phase with your client or with your strategist. This is product ABC, and it helps you, the user, buy, and then it's the core task of the product. And that's now the next thing is a very important thing. Currently, it cannot yet. And then you give the current limitations of the AI. That's a very important thing. As I said, we want to manage the expectations. And that's part of it, of course, to let the user know what the limitations are. Over time, however, it will provide you with better and more accurate results. That's what we see with current AI solutions. And we just heard about it before with ChatGPT or Midjourney or whatever the tool is. They get better and better. And that's due to the improvement of the algorithms. And you can do so or help it to do so by you have the type of user feedback. And that's a very important thing to do. To get a better understanding of where your journey is going to lead you to. Next step would be explainability and trust. There are many technical things associated with explainability. There's also interpretability. So whenever you're talking to a data scientist, they can take you down the rabbit hole and explain things to you. It's more or less a way of explaining what's happening in the black box we discussed before. And that's a very important thing as we would like to build trust. We don't want to have a system that's randomly selecting its outcomes. We want to understand what the reasons behind it are and for their decision making. And there are different ways to do that. Of course, trust, as I said, is a very important thing. And it's more or less the willingness, of course, to take a risk in favor of expected benefit. And therefore, they need to understand what they're risking and what they would get out of the system at the end. And that's not something you do with one statement. It has to happen over a course of time with numerous small interactions. And those must be established and maintained, of course. And there are many factors here. Could be clear communication, professional behavior, with overall UX, visual design, user control over the data, reduction of error messages. And we see that only the last one is a very technical thing that's really tied to the results of the AI. All the other things is more a way of communicating about the AI system and what it does, and what it's capable of and not. And therefore, it's always better to not explain too much the system behind, but the benefits and how it comes to those conclusions and the benefits on a very, how would you say that, on a very low level in regards of explaining it. Oops, sorry, back once. So ask yourself what factors create trust in the product, in your specific context, whatever you're building or trying to build. Which circumstances could damage or reduce the trust. If we stick to the example of before, if the app would tell me I have a high risk of skin cancer, and I go to the doctor and he checks me up and then he says, yeah, that's not the case. That was a wrong diagnosis. Then, of course, trust would be reduced, damaged, or even completely destroyed in the app. And then you have word of mouth, and people would quickly talk about it, and you get bad ratings and so forth. And under which circumstances do which confidences apply? That's also important, as we will see in the next slide. Very often, it's just a confidence level, a probability, which we're talking about. Now we're entering the realm of explainability. Sometimes it's possible to explain certain parts of the system, sometimes not. But there are two ways to approach that. Usually you could say you explain the system. So the aim is to show the user which criteria the system uses to come up with its conclusions. Example sentence here would be: the app uses image data to analyze and compare it with reference material. That could be one outcome of that skin screening app, for example. The other approach would be to explain the results. So the user is given the best possible explanation of the result. That could be based on the shape and color of the object. It is likely to be X, Y, Z, or whatever. Of course, you could also combine those two. And how would we do that? It's better sometimes to communicate the probabilities which the AI system is working, or what the output is. And that could be probability values, like probability of skin cancer is 80%, 20%, 10%. Or maybe a category like the evaluation results in a low risk, or in a medium risk, or a high risk. There are reasons maybe to do that, to not scare away the user, not giving him the user the final result, so to say, in numbers. It leaves it more open to the doctor then to check up and see if it's really the case or not. Or you can combine both, of course, like in the example shown here. Good. Another important factor is feedback and control. So clear feedback and user control are critical. Why? I think it's clear feedback is a crucial aspect of human interactions, as well as in technical systems. And of course, as I said, whenever there's an AI system, we're replacing some of, or augmenting some of those human interactions or workflows or whatsoever. And of course, the system needs to learn. That's one aspect. That's the technical aspect here, through explicit or implicit feedback. And we all know that from, let's say, Netflix, when you like movies and you like a series or a show, your recommendations will get updated and will get refined. That's a very explicit feedback, but it could also be implicit one by just ignoring things or not making use of several features. And that's important to, of course, leverage the AI experience. But we should not oversee the psychological aspect as well. And that's not so much an aspect in regards of the technical ones, like the machine learning algorithms behind, or the AI itself. It's more about that human factor in it. So the ability to provide feedback is an essential thing for the user. He feels valued, he feels necessary in the AI process, and has the idea of he's still part of the process, and he's on the steering wheel. He can take control over the whole process, and he can define the outcome to some extent, and he's the final person or the final instance to take the decision or not. Even if the system doesn't need feedback for correct predictions, even then, I would highly recommend to add a feedback cycle in there for those psychological reasons, to make give the user a good feeling about the interaction. And it could be useful in the future to come up, maybe, for example, to ideate new features, or to see what users think about the tool that's making use of AI. And last but not least, control. That's also very important. We're dealing with data here, with very sensitive data sometimes. So in the context of a medical product, like a skin screener, what's happening with the photos I take? Are they processed on my phone? Will they be sent to a server? Will it be processed there? Will they be stored? Where is that server located? All sorts of things. And what control do I have over those things? Can I delete them if I want to? What's happening? So again, here's a set of questions, of example questions. Come up with more, of course. How do you plan to give users control over their data and the AI system's behavior? in any context, that's a very important question. So if it's an app, if it's a tool used to, I don't know, so traffic or whatever, it's important to give the user that minimum amount of control at least. How do you communicate those important issues? How do you plan to address ethical concerns and potential biases in the AI system? And I think I don't have to explain to you, as most of you are UX professionals, how to gain those insights. I mean, we do that with our tool set, maybe through user interviews, to usability testing, whatever the weapon of your choice might be. It's important to back it up with proper research, but those questions should be answered. And I think it's just important to keep those things in mind. As I said, mental models and the user needs, expectation management, explainability and trust, feedback and control. And of course, the list could be longer. You could add, I don't know, how inclusive is your system, things like that. How much does it tend to be biased? All sorts of things could be considered here. But I think that's a basic set and a good starting point if you're creating a better user experience, a human-centered AI that's trustworthy, and ultimately, as I wrote here, leading to greater user adoption and satisfaction. That's it from my side. I just have a last slide here, and that's book recommendation, because I really like that book. It's pretty new. It came out in 2022, so it's not a prediction of the future. It really deals with current situations and what we find in the realm of artificial intelligence. Human-centered AI gives a very good insight in what to expect, what we should take care of in that context, how we can design interfaces and approaches in regards of artificial intelligence. And it don't have to be only interfaces, it could be conversational AI and things like that as well. And the book covers all that. And I'm not associated in any way. I just liked that book a lot, and it helped me to dive deeper into that topic. And yeah, that's it. And I hope the insights were useful for you.
Thank you very much, Clemens. So what I'd like to do now is open up the Q&A. So Abby asks, will we get the slides too? Now, I presume you don't mean my slides. I presume you mean Clemens' slides. Clemens, will that be possible?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. Okay. And if you've signed up to the webinar, what we can do is we can send you an email once we've uploaded the webinar to YouTube. We can send you an email with the link to the video, and we can include, I presume, like a Google Docs link to the slides. So I hope that will help. And I see Jim has a couple of questions here. So regarding trust, oh, it's not really a question, it's a statement. I guess it's asking whether you would agree, Clemens. Yes, it would be good to have the AI ask clarifying questions or follow-up prompts rather than just spitting out a best guess.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, trust is a very important thing. As I said, the user is like talking to a stranger, or even worse. I always relate it to someone writing a letter to someone, putting it under the door and getting some feedback out, and I never see that person. So that's the way it feels. How would you build trust with someone you cannot see and cannot understand? So therefore, it's very important to have those clarifying questions, those follow-up prompts to make it clear to the user. And you can play that through several ways, maybe in a workshop, especially if you have an existing system which you're trying to evaluate. You could have a second person playing the AI. That needs to be scripted, of course. So one plays the user, you can do that with your client, and you play it through. And the one person that's playing the AI is only allowed to react with outputs of the AI. And then you will see if the other person feels uncomfortable with the results and if they're trying to understand better what the AI is doing, and you still get the same reply over and over again. Then it feels uncomfortable and you see that you need to fix that. Should come up with maybe a better explanation. So rather than just saying, if I stick to the example from before, you have 80% probability of skin cancer and that's it, you would rather say, you have a high risk of skin cancer. The next step would be, please check with a professional, with a doctor. Everything's fine yet. There's the probability of a false diagnosis still, as this system is only trained with blah, 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 blah. So you're really trying to connect with the user. And by the way, UX writing is a very, very useful tool here, which I can highly recommend.
Yeah, I think for me, sort of as somewhat of a UX outsider, but as someone that has some experience, like most of us here, with interacting with AI tools or systems, you know, it's very important that these interactions and the responses given by AI are in a language that humans can understand, and in language that is not going to invoke strong, unnecessary emotions, as you said, such as fear.
Yeah.
I.e., you have a 95% chance of skin cancer, which is not going to help the situation. But even though it is perhaps the correct information based on the analysis. So yeah, UX writing, I think, is, in terms of AI, is extremely interesting.
And it's also important to see who you're addressing with that. I mean, if it's a patient, someone who's doing this on his own, then you're right. And that's what we did. We just came up with those categories with green, orange, and red. And even if you have a red result, it would say, please see a doctor sooner than later. It doesn't give you any information, though the system would be able to recognize skin cancer. But still, I think it's important to, as you said, just manage the emotions as well. On the other hand, if a doctor would use that tool, it would be a completely different situation. There you would like to be as exact as possible and give him the right amount of percentages here. But yeah, then the use case is a different one, the journey is a different one, and the goals and needs are different.
Yeah, so many factors. And yeah, thank you for the answer there. We have another question from Anthony. When an AI-based system does not produce reliably useful results, for example, when generating images in response to prompts, users often need to engage in trial and error before they get a good result. Do you know of good ways of helping users to engage more systematically and effectively in trial and error?
That's a good question. I think the core element here in the beginning is, what is a good result? I mean, that's a very subjective thing to say. I mean, a good result could mean two different things for two different persons. So I could think of a possible way of setting a system up in a way that it gives me options to choose from, similar to a chatbot, for example. So were you satisfied with the result? And if not, was it in regards to this or that? And you could come up with some sort of recommendation, maybe. Don't know if that is kind of answering the question.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question from Anthony. But I think the problem, I think I can see from your perspective, Clemens, is it is very subjective in that we don't have an example, or we don't have a couple of examples to really get into this one. But thank you, Anthony, for the question. I guess I'm sorry, but the best we can do at the moment is it depends.
It depends very often. Yes.
Sorry about that, Anthony. But for Marius here, Marius asks, at this stage, I presume you mean in this present moment, 2023, is it worth implementing AI as a core functionality if you depend on external services? Is it then better to invest in in-house solutions? Or is there a recommendation until there's a more stable solution? So I guess by in-house solutions, that would be relating to in-house AI solutions. Not quite sure.
Also struggling a bit to get it right. I just can give an interpretation of how I understood it. I think a very important thing, especially if you're involved in the creation of a new AI service or product, is to find out if it's really helping the user in the end. So, yep, okay. Is it something worth following, and how to achieve that goal? And in-house solutions, I mean, in regards of data sciences, of AI services, I would say if your team is not big enough, I would rather go for external solutions, external services, because they're well established and usually they have the abundance of test data behind it.
So there we go, Marius. I hope that satisfies the question there. Shout out to Nicholas in the chat as well. Nice to see you here. Thank you for leaving a comment. Just before we go, because I am conscious of time, don't want to keep everyone too long. I think we can still take a couple more Q&A questions. So if you'd like to get those in quickly, I think we can squeeze a couple in. But just to remind you, you can still claim the 2 free user tests for attending this webinar. So just click the QR code or head over to userbrain.com and sign up. And you can also try out our automated transcripts and other new AI tools when they become available. So it's really interesting times at Userbrain at the moment. And as a final slide, we have thanks for coming. So if you'd like to book a call with us, as in us meaning the Userbrain team, if you need a hand, if you're not sure what you need from user testing, if you're not sure which package to go for, how many tests you need, if you have questions about the product, whether it's suitable or not for your needs, then please get in touch with us. We're not going to sell to you. Basically, you can just book a 30-minute chat with one of our user testing experts, and we will help you find a good solution for your user testing needs.